It's so good to see you, all of you here. And now I did just get going. I believe it's going live on Facebook right now, so that you know. And really excited to have all of you here. I'm just going to start out and let's see. So we've got quite a few people here today. I'm really excited to have you here, Paul. And I see you have lots of guests from quite a few places as well. Now, I did hear some people in the East mention it's very late, so I did get you a coffee. So
perfect.
All right, so yep, it's perfect. So we've got it all ready for you here. So we're very, very excited to have all of you with us today. This is the Calgary Migratory Species Response Team Wildlife Wednesday. And this actual session we started out doing learning events in person with our volunteers as a bit of a benefit to ensure our volunteers knew they were valued. And because we're surrounded by such knowledgeable people in the work that we do, it was a great opportunity to share knowledge and come together. But now, due to COVID, we're actually going online. And as non-techie as I am, it does bring us an opportunity to actually change the format, where now we can take that learning, reach guests from even further away, but also to share this knowledge further than just within our own group. Not even just with Calgary, but even now different cities. So really excited to have you here. This is our second Wildlife Wednesday. I'm Kathleen Johnson. I'm one of the co-founders for the Calgary Migratory Species Response Team. This is an effort in partnership with Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society and St. Mary's University, where we're studying the effect of the impact of the urban setting on birds and bats, as many other organizations in the world that we really respect are also doing. So we're rescuing the ones that we can save, and we're learning from the ones that we can't. So we have many, we can just mute the room here. You can unmute yourselves. And I'm just going to check our waiting room here. We got a few more people to come in. Terrific. So I have muted you just to keep from having a lot of background noise, but we want this to be interactive. We want you to feel welcome to unmute and to ask questions and contribute to the conversation for sure. So now the idea of this, of course, is learning, but we also want, because of everything that's going on in the world, we want this to be a comfortable session. So feel free to, if you want to pop out and grab a tea, or if your children need attention. Kids are, of course, we try to make this family friendly. Your children are welcome to join as well. Obviously, sometimes we do touch on a couple of difficult topics with the wildlife situation that we're working with, but we really want your families to feel welcome, and your loved ones as well, as you gather around your warm, cozy computer tonight. So although we're here for, and we will have a wonderful evening of learning, we want to remain mindful of the importance of demonstrating our core values. So CMSRT welcomes and values all people. This is Black Birding Week, and it's also National Indigenous History Month for June. So Indigenous friends and Black friends, I just want to say you matter and welcome. So as we come together to learn and share, I'm honored to share that we are hosting this session from the traditional territories of the Niitsitapi, Blackfoot, the people of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda. We're situated on land where the Bow River meets the Elbow River, and that the traditional Blackfoot name of this place is Mohkinstsis, which we now call the city of Calgary. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, region number 3. So I'm so pleased to introduce everyone to Paul Groleau. Now, did I pronounce that properly, Paul?
Yeah, you got it right. You got it right.
And it's really nice to meet you, because we haven't actually had a chance to meet yet as well. Paul is the Vice President of Feather Friendly Technologies. He's an avid outdoors person and a conservationist who's proud to be part of creating change in the window collision world, which we're a big fan of that. A lot of his time is spent consulting with projects, big and small, all over the world. So Paul, welcome to you all the way from Toronto. This is very exciting. And I have to tell you that as of today, I believe we've gone international. I'm not sure if any of our American friends were able to join us today. I think we do have a couple though. Yes, we've got Lindsay, and that's fantastic. Yeah, and a few on Twitter too, there was some interest as well in meeting you. So this is our first international Wildlife Wednesday.
Wow.
Now, I would ask a favor if anybody who might have Facebook handy to you, because I want to focus on Paul. If anybody happens to see questions or anything, hopefully it is actually live on Facebook. Hopefully I didn't muddle that up. But if anybody does notice a question, please feel free, if you don't mind, to let me know and let Paul know so that we can have those questions answered. That would be outstanding. So how are you doing, Paul?
I'm very good, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to everyone today. I would like to recognize some experts that I see in this room already. We've got some people that I have learned a lot from and have a greater knowledge on this topic and birding in general, more than myself. And I don't see everyone's names there, but right away I see Lindsay Jacks from Lights Out Baltimore. I see Michael from Flap Canada. I see Brendan from University of Western Ontario, and we've got Paloma from Flap as well. Again, I'm sorry if I'm leaving everyone out. I don't see all the other names, and I'm a low-tech guy, so I don't know how to see everyone in the room. I'm sure there are others, but these are all people that I've gotten to know over my 2+ year span with Feather Friendly, who I have learned a great deal from. Funny, Lindsay and I were sharing emails. Was that yesterday or today, Lindsay, I think, and Michael and I the same, and Brendan and I and Paloma. So it's, these are people I speak to on a regular basis that I have great respect for, and who have, paved the way a lot in this. I don't want to say in this sort of global issue that we're dealing with. Michael started Flap, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're year 28 years into this with Paloma, and really have paved the way for a company like Feather Friendly to even exist. And for where we're at, we're celebrating our 15th year anniversary this year. We got started in this industry because our sister company, we're the 3M master distributor of window films and graphic films in Canada. And long story short, Flap was involved. Flap reached out to our owner and started the conversation. 15 years later, we're doing projects literally all over the world, whether it be from zoos to universities to government to military to nature centers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, schools. The list is endless. We've been so blessed to be accepted as a viable deterrent by a Flap Canada, by an ABC, American Bird Conservancy, and a lot of other organizations that we've been tested and approved, and we're just lucky. And one of the things, and I know the other people in this room, we all have a common goal, And that common goal is, at least if Feather Friendly's sort of unwritten motto is education, conservation. Oh, and by the way, we've got a proven solution. We all need to be on the same page to further this cause. The amazing thing is and I would hope the others sort of agree with this, is that the collision issue is at an all-time high as far as awareness and even interest. New York City just passed some legislation before Christmas. If I'm not mistaken, that was like 12 plus years in the making. The city of Toronto was the first city in the world to develop bird safe guidelines. So it's sort of nice. Michael was a big person behind all of that with Paloma. You know, again, Feather Friendly would not be here without those sort of standards and legislation in place. Other municipalities are looking at this in more and more detail all the time. Michael and I were asked to be a part of the Canadian Standards Association. They rewrote or updated a standard for bird collision for municipalities to get a hold of. And it was really neat because they brought in organizations like Flap Canada with ABC, Dr. Daniel Clem, who's been researching strikes since I think it was 1974. We had architects, builders, manufacturers. That's how Feather Friendly was involved. And the really neat thing about this standard that was written, it's best practice. And the idea was it was going to be accessible to all of Canada and sort of rolled out across Canada. But we found that a vast majority of input we were getting was from the US, which sort of really neat in the fact that I think they've looked to maybe Canada a bit as a little bit of a leader in maybe some of this. But by all means, in the US, they've written some very good standards. And actually, we referred to a few of them. One of them, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping around, but one of them was the 2x2 standard, which is spacing at 2 by 2 inches. The city of Toronto, when they passed their standard many years ago, was a 4 by 4. But as of this past January of 2020, they actually changed it to a 2 by 2. So we're starting to see the even it being more accepted, and people looking at how much better can it be, how much more can we do for the collision issue as a whole. You know, there's I guess, you know, to me that there's 4 key issues to any bird deterrent, and that being first being exterior surface application only. You know, we do get a lot of inquiries about people in residences saying, you know, I can't reach a second story, or, you know, they'll install something on the inside of the glass, which I guess my sort of train of thought, and please, the other experts in this room jump in on if they've got comments, but I've always been of the nature something is better than nothing. However, in a lot of circumstances, something placed on the inside of a window, of a double pane window, does not really become very effective due to certain lighting conditions during the day. So we really stress that first surface exterior, and the whole basis to it is breaking up that reflective nature. The second thing being spacing. You know, with our product range, we offer a residential DIY, so a person that maybe wants to address a patio door or a window of concern on their house. Oh, perfect. I have mine too.
I'll just be Vanna White for just a moment.
There you go. That's perfect.
Actually, it's a great little handy package that not sure how much window that covers. Probably quite a bit, I'm thinking, but it's great.
I don't know if everyone sees the messages down below that pop up in the chat, and I don't know if I'm the only one, but Paloma just made a good point, is that she had mentioned that second surface or that interior surface sometimes can give a false sense of protection against collisions.
Hmm. Sorry, do you mind explaining? And first, I'm really glad that you pointed out that Michael and Lindsay and Paloma are on this call. I'm glad that you mentioned when you did, because I think I would have become very, very nervous if I had been observant, because I really have to. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for particularly right at the beginning of Paloma. Provided the volunteer manual, hours on the phone, and insight, and you know, of course, Michael, you began all of this, so this is such a tremendous honor to have you.
Yeah.
And Lindsay has spent a ton of time with me on as well, giving me insight as well. And I haven't gone through the whole list of everybody here, but I am really glad. So I just want to jump in and say thank you so much for being here and for everything you've done. And I do. I'm curious, like, if you don't mind, when you say the second surface, if you don't mind explaining that. And then I was also curious about how you came to find the 2x2 was so much more effective than the 4x4.
Okay, so when you talk about a sealed pane of glass in your house, you've actually got two panes. This being the first surface exterior, this being second surface, this being third surface, and this being fourth surface, which is usually the interior of the house, if that makes sense to everyone. So, you know, sometimes they'll talk about, for instance, in commercial applications, which we do a lot of, sometimes there's talk about like acid etch glass. There are Walker Glass does an exterior. A lot of them do it on this second surface, which sometimes can be lost. So the idea is really, you know, so one of the analogies I always give is birds need to have that visual clue. And so having it on that first surface breaks up the surface reflection of the glass. A lot of times what I'll say is in a lot of office buildings nowadays, a lot of them are glass offices. By law, they actually have to have what they call a vision strip, which is usually about 4 feet high or so, which is usually a band of 2 to 4 to 6 inches, depending on the standard. And it's a frosted strip. So it's a visual clue so humans don't walk into glass. I'm sure a lot of the people on here, and I see Brendan smiling already, that we've all gotten those little memes or little videos of humans walking into glass, but we're expecting birds to be able to discern whether that there's glass there or not. So that first surface is so key of breaking up that surface reflection. So the second criteria of the 4 that I sort of go with is that spacing. And really, it sort of makes sense that the tighter the pattern, the more visual clue there is for a bird not to think they can go through there. So you can imagine a 4x4 spacing, and actually I've got a sample here. So our commercial product, we offer a 4x4 spacing. And I don't know how well everyone's going to be able to see this, but so I don't know if you can you see the white markers against my blue shirt there? And I'm sorry, there's a bit of a glare, but you figure there's 4 inches between every marker and 4 inches this way as well. So you can imagine a smaller species of bird, a hummingbird, etc. This is a blank space. You can imagine a bird coming at the window at a certain speed and wanting to adjust its flight pattern. and think, oh, well, there's a marker here, there's a marker here. Oh, maybe I can get through this center area. The tighter the spacing just makes it so there's more of a visual clue for the birds. This is our 2x2 harmony pattern, which, you know, obviously a bird's not going to figure it can maybe go through that spacing.
Right.
While I'm showing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was going to say, like, when we were lucky enough that Global had us on one morning, and it just came to mind to try to explain why it would be that, you know, one hawk up in the corner doesn't do it. And it came to mind. So I hope you guys will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I was just thinking about it. And I guess if you're in a forest, a bird would go through trees and all kinds of small spaces just as normal way of being a bird. Is that correct? Is that why they see a dot? They just don't see it the way we do, so they go around it. And if it's not close enough together, they'll
Well,
think it's a spot.
maybe I'll say my little piece, and if anyone else wants to jump in here, they can. But imagine a 4-foot window by 6 feet high. You've got this huge span of glass. You put a hawk sticker in a bottom area of the window. They have another, what, 85% of glass that isn't treated. So all they're going to do is avoid, and if it's a hawk sticker or whatever, they're not even recognizing it as a bird of prey. They're recognizing that as a black blob or a white blob, and they'll just avoid this area. But then you've got the rest of this window that's completely untreated that they can fly to. A bird, from my understanding, will just adjust its flight path as it's going through. So hawk stickers, a single one, they will not work. It's been proven. Hawk stickers or any other type of sticker or decal like that will work, long as they're spaced properly. And that 2x2 spacing is going to be your best level of protection against a strike. Dr. Daniel Clem talks very much about a 4x2 spacing, which is actually our rain pattern. And you can see it's more of a linear or a line pattern. We've done a lot of commercial projects like this. However, sometimes the eye is drawn to this line more than something of a grid pattern. So like on our DIY tape, so anyone wanting to address their home, our tape is already pre-spaced at 2 inches. So the markers are spaced at every 2 inches along the roll. So I don't know if you can really see that, but it's already pre-spaced. And then what you would do is lay a line down, go 2 inches down, lay another line down, etc. down the window. Our commercial product is definitely a different sort of beast in the fact of it comes in a large 3-foot by 150-foot roll. It's manufactured for a little bit of ease of installation on a larger project. So the other thing that when they talk about bird collisions is contrast. You definitely want contrast on your windows. The idea is it's a visual, literally a visual clue. So going back to that vision strip in an office building, birds need that visual clue too. And from a lot of what I have read is that orange is the absolute best color. In 15 years of doing this, we've never done an orange building. So this is sort of the various colors have been tested over time. Ours, a lot of people refer to it as a white. It is like a pearl gray color, but it does look bright off the window. We have done custom colors for commercial projects of that nature. And then really the last criteria that we sort of work with is height. So not really for the residential end of things, but more for the commercial project. You're doing at least 4 to 5 stories high or top of the mature tree canopy. And um, the idea behind that is here in Toronto, our trees are smaller than out on the West Coast in BC. And obviously that would, probably play the same throughout the US. Strikes can happen higher up in a building, but they're very, very few and far between. It's basically a collision issue is a bird sitting in a tree or sitting somewhere looking across and seeing the reflection and saying, hey, that's where I want to go. The other issue we do run into is what we refer to as fly-through zones. So something that we've seen big in the last couple of years is clear deck railings, where again, birds can't discern whether that's glass or not. Then I guess the thing about glass railing is it's usually just a single pane. But usually it can be applied to one side and be effective on both sides. Maybe not 100%, but it definitely works a little differently on a single pane glass.
Actually, Melanie Whalen, one of our co-founders, is also on the line, and she's the director of animal care for Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Services. And I bet that her ears perked up when you said about the glass railing, because I also volunteer with them as well. So I got to go along recently for a release. And Melanie, do you have a microphone? Are you able to tell us about what bird hit that glass? Because that was pretty relevant to what Paul was just
Yeah,
saying.
so that was a barred owl that
Mhm.
hit, it was a glass balcony that they had. It was probably 15 feet up, and the barred owl hit this pane of
Wow.
glass. So yeah, luckily we were able to release him. Hmm.
Yeah, so I think that that's something that people don't think a lot of, and it's important. Hey,
And I'm sorry, guys. I tend to get rambling and I start going, and so rein me in. And by all means, Lindsay, Michael, if anyone wants to jump in, um, please feel free. Again, we've got people in here that are a heck of a lot more knowledgeable than myself, so
you
please
know
feel
what,
free, guys.
Paul, your rambling is not rambling. It is awesome. It is so interesting and informative that don't you worry. You guys are going to be getting way more tired than I will be, or any of these guys
Well,
will.
don't thank me, because everything I've learned is from a lot of the people up here that I see them in the little box with their little names underneath. So I defer to them as the thanks to things. But
Yeah, and I did actually make a note there that if anybody has things to add in, please feel free to jump in. We would love to hear from you. And I see Brendan, you were able to join off of Twitter. Just that's great because you got some interesting things happening there too. So I'm glad that you could join and be with us today as well. So yeah, sorry. So back to you, Paul.
no, and I will add, if I know sometimes people don't always feel comfortable asking questions right here and now. By all means, my role within the company is to do a lot of consulting and to do a lot of that end of stuff. So I spend my days, trying to work on various projects, answering people's questions. So never hesitate to reach out. You know, um, by all means, I don't know if anyone's got a pen handy or whatever, but they can easily email me directly at Feather Friendly, or go to our website. There's the info@featherfriendly.com email address that they can click on. Um, does anyone have anything to add to sort of what I've covered off? I see Lindsay and Michael and Paloma and Brendan, they're all being so quiet there, but these guys, feel free, guys. If you want to jump in on anything, please do.
Well, I'll just add something that I think might be an opportune time to mention. You were talking about the 2x2 spacing, And I thought it's important for people to understand that the 2x2 spacing was also to try and play with spacing that was going to be more aesthetically appealing to the human eye. And
Right.
we've noticed that equally spaced markers are less obvious to the human eye. And if you can make these markers less obvious to the human eye, it's going to be more appealing and therefore perhaps more of an interest for people to actually invest and put it on their windows. So unequally spaced markers are more noticeable. And it just so happened that tightening it up to 2x2, which was even better at making it more noticeable to birds, that it was also more aesthetically appealing.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you, Michael. And we could hear you, just so you know, you were a little bit quiet, but we could hear you. So that is interesting. It's very nice to meet you, by the way. That's so good. No, good. Keep
One of the things we get asked sometimes is, I want something that the birds will see, but I won't see, because people are very worried about, aesthetics, their view. We're just doing a project in Colorado. It's a residence. They're out in the mountains. It's just gorgeous area. The house is a lot of glass, and they were very worried about how their view was going to be affected. So people will often say, Paul, am I going to see this? You put it on a window that you look out on a regular basis. You put something on the window, you're going to notice it. Your eyes are drawn to it. Our product, so our DIY product, they're 1/4-inch squares. Our commercial product are 1/4-inch circles or markers. That the only difference there is how it's manufactured. It's manufactured from the same product. It's just, we're trying to maximize and keep the cost down from a large roll. When we slit down into smaller single rolls, that's why they're squares. That's really the only reason.
Do you find, Paul, like a lot of homes now are like, I'm in a little quaint bungalow, but a lot of people have now with the larger homes, top to ceiling windows. Is that where you're seeing? Yeah, I see Brendan nodding. Are you seeing maybe more of your commercial product being used even just for larger windowed homes?
Yes.
It seems like that would be more practical for application.
It is, the DIY, it works well. I'll be very honest, and probably anyone who's installed it on here would agree with me. It can be tedious. And I'm a little bit OCD, so I like everything nice and straight and nice and square and everything lining up in a nice grid pattern. So with the DIY, that's a little harder to do. The commercial product obviously is much easier to get a real symmetrical, professional look. However, saying that, I've had several people do entire houses using DIY. And we've done a project in Australia where they built this, for lack of a better term, a glass house. And it was very sort of industrial. And they took it on themselves, husband and wife team, and that they applied the DIY product to basically the entire building. Several hundred rolls.
Wow.
They were must have been very, very patient. But, we're seeing that, more and more people are looking at the commercial product as a viable solution for them. I don't want this all to be about feather friendly, because this isn't a feather friendly advertisement. This is about the collision issue. But just so I wanted to touch on a couple things on us is just that, the way our product's designed and developed, you don't have to worry about cleaning the exterior of the windows. The only thing we recommend is not using an abrasive cleaner or a power washer. To give you an idea, we've got commercial installations here in the city of Toronto that are 13 plus years old. And still the durability and longevity is still there. So sometimes people are sort of weighing up, the expense might be great for a commercial project, but this isn't something that you're doing on a regular basis. We fully expect a 12 to 15 year lifespan, if not longer. We use 3M, some 3M materials in our end proprietary product. So you're getting that durability and longevity. That is a question we get asked a lot, is the cleaning and how long will it last, sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious about, and I know you're not trying to make this an advertisement, and I totally get that. And I'm grateful that you're sharing this information, because I think we're all on the same page that the more attractive a product is, the easier it is to apply. You know, different things you're describing means that all of us have less to do at 5 a.m. For
Yeah.
us, our surveys are on hold, so you know, we kind of sit at home and worry about what's happening downtown because we're not down there all the time. But yeah, I think that that's really good, because I think it's in everybody's best interest to know what all the different options are. And I'm kind of curious because like, what does it look like in terms of the application process for the commercial? Is it pretty slick to have
The
done?
commercial, yeah.
Who would you have do it? Like, would I say you know, had my building and I wanted some installed? Do you have installers, or do I ask?
We do. So we partner with basically the 3M certified dealers, applicators, and they come on board and are part of our network. So I have an authorized dealer applicator network that spans North America as well as outside of North America. We do have some international people that are on board. We've done projects in Germany, in Brazil, Poland, Australia. We are embarking on a very, very exciting project in New Zealand with one of our partners. We've done Panama, all throughout the US and Canada. I do want to go back to one thing here. Paloma sent a message, and again, I don't know if everyone sees those little chat things at the bottom, but Paloma's question was about, does Feather Friendly see custom requests on patterns, which is an excellent question, because we have what we refer to as 4 stock patterns. However, we have the availability to do all kinds of custom, and we have done custom applications with design as well as even the size of the marker. We did the Chicago University, the library, they did a whole new redesign of the library, and we actually took some of the internal design elements and incorporated it into the exterior marker elements. They actually used all 3 of our patterns and melded them in and sort of overlapped them. And then on the ground floor, we did this whole sort of large, small sort of wave of sized markers, even in amongst the other markers. So we've got the availability to do virtually anything. And it's funny because the markers were developed way back when as something that it's sort of the most aesthetically pleasing, the least obtrusive. Fast forward 15 years, people are now like, if we got to do something, why not do something creative? Why not add a graphic element to it, or a custom element to it? So that is something we're doing more and more. So we're so lucky in some of the jobs that we've done worldwide. One of the ones I failed to mention was we deal with the South Korean government, and we've been working with them for about a year. And what they're dealing with there are noise barriers on the highways. And because it's such a densely populated country, that all their highways have these 40 odd high feet, 20 feet, 4 to 40 feet noise barriers, clear glass, and they're just killing birds left, right, and center. When we first started,
pretty shocking video, actually. One of the fellows that
yeah.
I followed, he had some pretty upsetting ones where he had parked and then walked up, and it was
just bird after bird.
It was shocking.
Yeah,
I just really felt for him. He could different language, but I didn't need to understand the words to know how he was feeling.
You know, the whole collision issue, and I think I mentioned in the beginning, is sort of at an all-time high. I absolutely hate, and I don't like using that word hate, that it took a global pandemic for people to really understand the bird collision issue, in particular in residences.
Yeah.
So commercial projects became a focus because they're public areas. Michael can attest to this when he was starting out, and he was down in downtown Toronto in the financial district, where hundreds of people are entering the same building every day and stepping over dead birds. So that got the focus because there was probably several birds there, and it was a public place. There are so many times, and Michael was part of a roundtable discussion in Vancouver. I believe that was 2 years ago now, Michael, with the International Congress of Ornithology, where they started in the room saying, how many people have observed a bird strike? Everyone put their hand up, and then it was like they sort of talked backwards as far as, well, 1 to 2 strikes, people kept their hands up. 3 to 4, you start seeing hands drop, and it quickly petered out. But what people don't realize is residences are the biggest killers, just based on the sheer volume of residences there are. And Brendan, go.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
You sure can. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. I wanted to add one thing on to what Paul was just talking about, because I think so much of the problem and the solution for the problem is changing behavior and changing minds first. And to do that, you need people to realize the gravity of the issue, but also make it applicable to them, right? So I love this exercise of asking people how many people here have witnessed a bird strike, because I've seen the same reaction from crowds. They just all raise their hand, and you can go up and say 2, 3, 4 birds. But what I like to pose to people is, okay, so I want you to think about the window that the bird hit from your memory, because that window is still there. That window is there 24/7, 365 days a year for many years. And people don't really think about that. We're very much limited to the here and now. We're not very good at projecting our minds back in time or in the future and thinking about things that aren't right in front of us. But there's just a whack of glass out there. And so I then will sometimes ask people, okay, well, that one window is still there. How many windows are there on your block? How many windows do you pass on your way to work, right? And people have their own way of kind of piecing that together and having this like aha moment of, oh, wow, this is really serious. Anyway, that's all I wanted to add. Paul, I'll let you continue.
Awesome. No, that's perfect, Brendan.
I think that is really important that you mentioned that, Brendan, because I guess we're probably, we've got some of our wonderful volunteers around here too. I know that lots of them will be picking this up on Facebook later too. And I think we could probably all share. My new thing for the last year is I can't look at anything the same way again. I can't watch Grey's Anatomy with my daughter and not watch every commercial start, like it ends with them on the entrance of the hospital. And every time I'm like, can I write them? Who would I write? And it's like nothing, I could just see risks everywhere. At the end of my street, they're doing some beautiful renovations, beautiful front window, great view right to the backyard now. And it's like it almost tortures you. And then the tweets of seeing, strike after strike. And I think for me, one of the most frustrating things is seeing, like we've talked now about, asking people, how many strikes have you actually experienced? And I wonder how many of them ever did anything with their window. I bet very, very few. And that's what we're seeing too, is even just the excuse, oh, we put the hawk sticker on, we're good. And it's like, they feel like they've done something great, which they've tried, but it's just not adequate. It's heartbreaking because that the result is going to be the same.
It's
if I could,
sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say if I could add some positivity, like
Yes, please.
some like good news out of all of this, because people have been at home, they are realizing they just don't get those 1 or 2 bird strikes per year.
Mhm.
We, again, I hate that it took a global pandemic for this to happen, but the awareness at the residential level really caught us off guard this year. We have our business quadrupled during this pandemic. We were actually in sort of dire straits at one point because we had been working from home. As everyone, we were deemed a non-essential business. And we wanted to do what was right, but we were getting hammered with online orders to the point where I had to come in and was working as a one-man gang trying to get product out, and people looked after. We processed well over 400 orders within 1 week, which so I can't tell you the number of phone calls and the number of emails I received saying, hey, we need help. We thought we only got 1 or 2 bird strikes per year. I've had 8 today. I had one client, and I shared this with Michael and Paloma right away, and I think Brendan as well, that the one day I had this phone call from a gentleman on the East Coast, right in the flyway, and said, you know what, Paul, I knew I got 1 or 2 strikes, spring migration, 1 or 2 strikes, fall migration. He said, I've had 8 birds hit today.
Oh my goodness.
And that was a regular conversation that, because we're away from our homes most of the day.
Yeah.
And when we come home, there's not always a bird there. If a bird has passed on, it very well could have been picked up by a scavenger. One of the things I do want to sort of add to this, and we get questioned a lot, or people will often say this, and I hate to be so blunt, and I'm always trying to find the right way to say this, but the number of people we do talk to as well that say, oh, well, the bird hit the window, it was stunned for 15, 20 minutes, and then it flew away, so everything's good. And I don't know the exact scientific numbers, but we do know that majority of the birds, once they've struck, they may be in a situation where they're stunned, but their first reaction is sort of when they're coming to a bit, is to get somewhere safe. They don't feel like they're safe in the open there, or having a human sort of hovering over them, looking at them. The first thing that we like to do is, recommend that they get it to a rehabber if at all possible, because these birds suffer severe head trauma. And the unfortunate part is, thank you, Paloma. Paloma just said, Paul, be blunt. Sometimes it's the only way people realize. And I do sort of dance around it sometimes, and I shouldn't. Basically, what it comes down to is the odds are the bird has flown away and died somewhere else.
I'm glad you said that, Paloma, because I was thinking the same thing, and I'm sorry that I was negative earlier, but it is the reality. No. And I'm glad that you're sharing that. And actually, Melanie wrote too. So of course, like I mentioned, she is a certified wildlife rehabilitator herself. And one of the things that we learned in the fall is we had found a brown creeper. And I think actually, Paloma, you had educated us too about brown creepers, and I think hummingbirds, you said too, tend to get entangled into cobwebs and human hair and things like that as well. But I think there was a story, I think it was Ottawa, where they had picked up a brown creeper and kept it a little longer just for observation. Seemed to be fine. They were ready to release it. And then it ended up getting, Melanie, what is it called with the air sacs? I think the air sacs were injured and they had to treat it.
Air sac puncture.
Maybe, hey? Yeah, it was
Yeah,
like,
sorry, I was just trying to unmute here.
it's
Yeah,
okay.
they're just ruptured air sacs.
The ruptured air sacs, because then it's treatable, right? And then, or sometimes it's treatable, or at least you don't want
Yeah.
them to.
Yeah,
for
it
them-
can be treatable with time and proper anti-inflammatories.
right. Or at the very least, you don't want them suffering somewhere
Yeah.
as well. Because I think that you're right. Like when they strike, you hear so many of those where they struck, they're fine, they flew away. And I think that that's probably why we skirt the issue a little bit, is we don't want people to feel hurt. People don't want the birds to be hurt. We know that. And so it does hurt to hear, actually, it probably isn't okay. And but I think it is important that we do educate on that. There was a really sad video recently. It was actually, I retweeted it. I don't recall the original tweeter, maybe Brendan, of the bird on the bird feeder that had been stunted.
Oh,
Was it you
yeah.
that tweeted it?
Not my video, but yeah.
Yeah, so I borrowed it from you. Thank you.
And someone had just mentioned there, and I'm sorry I didn't catch the name. They were saying, as someone who's maybe suffered personally from a concussion, how long it does affect you, and how you can, like, as a human, imagine, if you've ever received a concussion, let alone a bird, which is, very different as well. So,
Right.
I
That's a
think
really good point. That's a
And
really
I think
good
it's
point.
important to know that when someone says that, oh, it hit my sliding glass window, it went down and then it flew away after like 10 minutes, it must be okay. It's important to just be honest and just say, we don't quantitatively know what happens to a bird after it has a collision with a window or glass.
Yeah.
And that's why there is the first time a study led through Powder Mill Nature Reserve to quantify that. So birds that hit glass get tagged after they go through rehab, after we have assumed that they have passed all of the criteria of being medicated, proven that they can fly well, and what we deem releasable, we release that bird, but we don't know what their success rate is of continuing their migration.
right.
And I know this is a 3-year study and it's going to be a while also because we're in a pandemic. But it's important to let people know that while you think that a bird flew away, it has recouped. We've never quantified that with science. There's never been a research to that. So it's important to just have that open conversation to anyone. I think that's important.
Yeah.
That's extremely well said, Lindsay. One of the things that, and I'm sorry, Michael, I was just gonna, when I'm finished, you go. I was just gonna say quickly, one of the things that Michael and myself and Brendan and Lindsay and Paloma, we've all spoken about is trying to get the same information, consistent information to people. I'm amazed at the number of Facebook groups that are birding groups that, we get onto, we join as feather friendly. And, we've searched, you just do a quick little search and it's, search collision. And there'll be someone that have posted something about we had a collision. You get 27 different people respond, 27 different answers as to what to do. Michael and I were talking about this the other day that, I read an article, and the problem is you've got people who mean well, their heart is in the right place, but they're passing on misinformation. This one particular person said, heat a towel up in the microwave and wrap the bird in it. And I'm not a rehabber. But to me right away, I'm thinking that is the last thing you should be doing. And I see from Mel, she just put yikes. And the problem is you had 3 or 4 people underneath that say, oh, I never had heard that before. That's great. Thank you very much. And you get this misinformation. So one of the things that Michael and I have talked about, and I welcome everyone on here that would like to participate, is us banding together and making sure that there's proper, concise information that we all share. We're all saying the same story. You know, Feather Friendly has to sell product to keep the lights on, to keep us all employed. But that's not first and foremost what we're about. What we're about is education and conservation. The other people on this panel, and I keep referring back to the squares I see right in front of me, and being Brendan, Michael, Lindsay, Paloma, that, you know, are of the same thought process, the same end goal. We're all in this together to conserve wildlife and to conserve birds. So the more we can band together to be saying the same thing and educating people. I'm glad Paloma sort of pushed me to start being a little more assertive and a little more blunt about it. You know, you hate saying certain things, that a bird could pass away or has passed away because it's hit a window. And I appreciate Lindsay's comments there, and it's given me some a little more fuel for me to be able to pass on a message that you know, explains that much better. Sorry, Michael, I rambled. You go.
Okay, so I'm going to move on from what I was originally going to say, because am I right that we have till 10 o'clock? Because it's already 10 o'clock here in Toronto. It's already 10. How long are we allowed to carry on for?
So it's 8 o'clock in Calgary, and do you know what? We can go as long as we'd like to. Absolutely. And
Good.
Totally. So as long as you guys are okay, and for others on
Okay.
the line too, if anybody does get sleepy, you know, this is a relaxed atmosphere. You can always pick it up on Facebook, but no, please, I'm loving this forum. So yeah, feel free to share and stay.
Okay, so I want to focus on Feather Friendly right now. Actually, before Feather Friendly, the convenience group. Paul, you said a lot through your talking here, that you're lucky and you're fortunate in the various successes that you're encountering. No way. I'll be quite blunt. As early as the mid-90s, the president, George Strajanica of the convenience group, was the only person willing to humor me and listen to me, that there's an opportunity here and a huge lack of product to address this issue. And if you just take the time to listen to me, this could prosper for you as well. And I've tried this with so many different companies. And the convenience group were the only company that took the time to listen and actually try different things. So you have definitely earned this title as a leader in bird collision deterrent product, period. Because just a lot of stubborn people out there and closed minds, and you guys had open minds and made this all possible. So thank you.
Wow.
Wow, thank you, Michael.
Well done, Paul.
Well, there was a lot of people ahead of me that took a big role in where we're at today. I was lucky enough to Reader's Digest version on me. I spent 18 years in the sporting goods industry for a large international company in brand management, in product development. Lucky I traveled quite a bit around the world, did a lot of trade shows, did a lot of various dealings. I burnt out, started my own consulting, was working with would-be entrepreneurs and startups and that sort of stuff. Got a call from George. George brought me in, and 2 weeks later, I was given the opportunity to sort of lead Feather Friendly into the next chapter. I'm an avid outdoors person. I'm not a birder. Lindsay says, now you're stuck with us. You know what? No way. You know, again, if it wasn't for all of you humoring me and answering all my silly questions as we've gone along, and my crazy off the wall ideas, we wouldn't be where we're at. It's been so much fun. You know, I'm lucky to be in a point in my career where things that I do every day can help make a difference in a very small way. I think about all the product that we've installed worldwide, how many birds we've saved. We're pretty darn lucky to be a part of this awesome industry and awesome awareness. And I think Michael might get sick of my calls every once in a while to bend his ear or to bounce a crazy idea off him. But the more we talk about this, the more awareness, the more opportunity to create change. Do I want every project to be feather friendly? Darn right I do, because I think we offer the best product. Are there other solutions out there? Yes, there are. Do other solutions go up? Yep. And by the way, I'm glad that they have at least gone up, that at least something's being done. We're all in this together, and I think we've all got that common goal. And we've been lucky because we've been selected for a lot of different projects. And Kathleen had sent me some notes, because I was just going to sort of wing this. That's where I think I do a little better than trying to follow a script, or, if I was to share screens and stuff like that, I'd have this butchered.
You're winging it great. I think winging is working for us for sure.
I got the gift of gab, I think, and if a few people have fallen asleep, that's okay. But you had talked about maybe mentioning some of the projects that we've been a part of. That I think one of the coolest ones I was a part of was the Smithsonian Tropical Research Center in Panama. Here they are, it's a research center researching birds in the middle of the forest, and unfortunately they were killing them. It was an incredible project for me. It's funny, everyone's talking about puns and stuff. We often use the feather in our cap, and however, we don't use kill two birds with one stone. We use the save two birds with one dot sort of analogy. We've done the White Sands Missile Test Range in the US, so military. I've had talks that are ongoing with NASA. We've done York University, UBC out in Vancouver, some other massive projects in the Toronto and surrounding area. We've done a ton of zoos throughout North America. Universities, nature centers, the Audubon Society nature centers. It's countless. There's been times people have sort of asked us, and we sort of have to go back, and we're in the midst of sort of compiling a new list because we've been involved in so many different things. And we're lucky to be doing this.
I was going to ask you a couple of, and we do have a few of our volunteers on here as well, who feel free to jump in with questions and your own experiences, guys, because you're awesome, and thanks for being such terrific volunteers. I was going to ask you, with the projects that you've been in, two things came to mind. Now, you did make a long list just now, if there was one that really stood out as exciting, but the one, it may or may not be the same answer. But was there a particular project that going in, they had a devastating amount of strikes, or a particularly high number of strikes, where it was really clear they needed this, and how that all went and how it felt after having it done and seeing the results? Or maybe they're all really, really high, or maybe I have 1,000 questions for you, because I'd like to know how many go into it, maybe just being proactive and saying, well, we're doing this and we want to be careful. But I'm thinking a lot of them are more reactive. And do you have a story about that?
Yeah, let's face it, I think it's more reactive than anything. And I think really you touched on volunteers. So organizations like FLAB, organizations like Lights Out Baltimore, organizations like yourself who are raising the awareness. I'm going to use Paloma's recommendation for me to be blunt, calling people and organizations to the mat to be responsible. Michael, Paloma, and Flap did that very early on. One of the biggest projects that we have done is a very prestigious property here in Toronto, Young Corporate Center, owned by Cadillac Fairview. That was pretty much the start of this. This is our 6th or 7th year doing an installation there, which finishes off the building, which has 2 installers there for the complete season that is available to us. They are probably treating another, probably another 15,000 to 20,000 square feet of glass.
Wow.
And it's been one that's been heartbreaking. We actually have, while our installers were installing at the property, they were actually experiencing bird strikes right next to them as they were installing the product.
No kidding.
Now, I actually have a picture of, and I apologize, I don't know my bird species as I should, but it was some sort of bird of prey that had run into the window and was killed.
Okay.
And we know from the feedback of the property owners that it's working, that they're not experiencing the bird strikes. And one of the things that we try and do as a company too is that we're just not going to go there and install the product and say thank you very much and collect our fee.
You've got a great program that goes right along with it. You sent us some of that. Yeah, tell us about that. That's
exactly. So that's been a big thing that we developed in the last few years, and we called our project recognition program. So part of the things we want to do to raise more awareness is to celebrate it, to celebrate an installation, to celebrate the client, the people who are actually, investing the money in doing this. So we do a few things. So one of the things we do is a plaque that can be applied to the building, and it's 100%, customizable with their logos and everything. We try and make a big deal about it. This whole program that we do is something that Feather Friendly looks at is how we're giving back. It does not cost the clients anything. And it gives them, again, the opportunity to sort of say, hey, look at us. We're a good corporate citizen. Look at what we're doing. Another thing we do is custom graphics, window graphics. A lot of these places are public areas. So why not explain to people why that there's markers on the window? So we've done it with the zoos. We've done it with a lot of government buildings. So this is one that we did with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. So we actually do a window graphic, 100% customizable for them. And a lot of it has the same message of talking about, and for people that maybe don't know 100% that are on this today, is that the numbers in North America are up to 1 billion, and that's a B, are killed per year through window collisions. So this particular plaque or window sign that we did, 1 billion birds fatally collide with windows in North America annually. To do our part and help serve the Pennsylvania Game Commission, we've installed feather-friendly markers to help birds see our windows and avoid deadly collisions. So you had asked earlier, Kathleen, maybe one of my most favorite installs, and I failed to mention Zion National Park. I hiked there with my wife 2 years ago, and I'm a massive Arizona, Utah kind of hiking guy. I love that area. and we got a call from the sort of operators of the visitor center, and we treated all the windows. And actually, in that email that you sent out to everyone, it was the arrowhead graphic with the information in there about the collisions. So we did 22 of those window graphics that they installed all over the center. So again, it's that opportunity to celebrate and to educate people even further. We've even done case studies where it's a printed case study that, you know, celebrates the client. We did that for the Museum of Nature in Gatineau, Quebec. We've done one for a big project in Poland. This is another window graphic we did for OSU, Oklahoma State University, with Dr. Scott Loss. And we treated 19 bus shelters. And on that, we used, every one of the bus shelters had this graphic. Again, people waiting for the bus, waiting there, now understand why that there's markers all over it. That's been a big part of trying to continue the education and celebrate all of this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what a great thing for to promote your corporation as being responsible and a forerunner of really doing the right thing. Like, it just says so much. Like, to see that, to walk up to a business and to see that, it would speak volumes about their attitude and their intent, I think, is really something. And I'm curious, I think I asked you earlier on when you first reached out to us, and thank you for the Twitter prizes that you provided too.
Oh, no problem.
That was very nice. One thing I wondered about was if you had any Calgary installations. So if you don't know at this particular second, that's okay. But if you don't, I would be really excited to hear who would do the first, because
we actually do.
do?
And I apologize, I don't know the project right off the top of my head.
That's okay.
But I can definitely get you that information. One of the things we're trying to do too, we've revamped our website and are adding more and more all the time that we want to start breaking into, you know, so people can go on there and get, you know, information on areas that we've done installations. You know, we do a lot of photography and ask our dealers to do the same thing as they're doing the install and after install, so we can share some of that. But I can definitely get you that information.
That'd be fantastic. And if you're in touch with them, if you wouldn't mind asking, please, if we could highlight them on our Facebook or even,
by all means.
Would love to give them that recognition. I did notice sorry, I actually muted myself.
There we go.
We have a few watching live on Facebook. I have figured out now how to toggle back and forth. I'm becoming extremely technical now. So if you need me to reformat a computer or anything, I've got it. Julia joined us on Facebook Live, so hopefully she's still there watching. But her question is, have you ever partnered with visual artists to create window applications that fit the specs for bird safety, either privately with your commercial or industrial clients or through public art projects? Which I think is a wonderful question, because we also have some artists on our volunteer team as well. That would be really cool to hear about.
So funny that you mentioned that. FLAP was in the midst of a major program with that idea to raise awareness even further. And unfortunately, the COVID sort of delayed that slightly, but there still is that whole program that's going to take place. We, UBC did a very interesting installation at the university that used printed film. So one of the things that's unique about our product is only the markers stay on the glass. So it's not like you're getting a full sheet of film that's applied to your glass. The only thing that remains on the glass are the markers. So in the instance of what UBC did, they actually threw it out to their student body and said, here's the criteria. It's these windows, it's this size, come up with the artwork. Now, amazingly enough, an English major won the design competition, and she had her vision basically it was printed on a clear film and applied on all the windows. And so it gave a mural-like look to this bank of windows. And I believe it was in their cafeteria windows, if I'm not mistaken. And it's this great sort of vegetation, bird sort of motif. And it meets that bird collision criteria. So yes, we do a lot of that. So one of the things you're going to see a lot of changes with Feather Friendly probably in the next month or two is that we've got quite a few new products coming out that address this collision issue, but also an extra sort of bonus to it all with some cost savings for heating and cooling, some anti-graffiti, some safety security, and full customizable graphics that we do. So to answer, sorry, long-winded answer to that question, but yes, we do that, and we gladly work with artists and anyone involved in this to do custom projects.
Oh, that's really great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds wonderful. I'm curious if any of our volunteers or anybody has any questions. Give you a second to unmute.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in terms of getting the ball rolling on a project, you've seen a lot of different situations in which glass is killing birds, and somehow Feather Friendly is contacted, Feather Friendly is brought in, the quote is provided, there's some back and forth, and then miraculously the windows get fixed. So I'm wondering, from your experience, what are the predictors of success? What kind of person or group usually starts the ball rolling?
That's an interesting one, Brendan, because a lot of times we're seeing in the university end of things, it's graduate students raising the awareness and getting the buy-in of certain staff members that support it. A lot of it has to do with what the volunteers do. The going out, monitoring buildings, collecting the data. Brendan and I have walked Western together, and looking at how you raise that awareness, and it is in that in-your-face data of here are the dead birds. There's a big thing in New York right now, New York City. About 2 weeks ago, a volunteer had gone out and was monitoring the Circa building in New York. And it hit Twitter, and it hit Twitter with a storm. I just happened to be on. It was a Saturday morning, and jumped on and said, "Listen, how can I help? We're tied in with the New York City Audubon, and this thing grew legs, and it grew legs quickly." That was Saturday. On Monday morning, there was an article in USA Today, I think it was, and so we're at the point now, as an update today, the building management team has been contacted, and Paloma just mentioned, she goes, unfortunately, people need to see the numbers of bodies as definite proof. Mm-hmm. And it's so key what all the volunteers do. Going out there, monitoring, taking those photos, documenting those strikes. So the amazing thing on this Circa building is one of the volunteers out in New York had done a whole database the year before on all the strikes and all the locations. So it was like there was this hard data right away. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like someone going and knocking on a door saying, hey, there's 4 dead birds out here. What are you going to do about it? It's no, here's the documented strikes. Here's the species. I've been lucky enough to be a part of FLAP's annual bird layout that unfortunately was canceled this year because of the virus. I'll tell you, that was a heck of a hard thing for me to participate in. That first year, I really struggled. I think Michael and Paloma sort of saw that, where they do a layout of Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, it's usually, 1,000 or two birds that are collected. It's not all the birds that are collected, it's just a sort of a representation. And there's birds that I've never seen. Oh, Paloma just said 2,000 to 3,000 birds that are laid out. And there are birds that I've never even seen, never even knew existed, that to me look like exotic birds that you would find in, some exotic location, not realizing that those birds migrate through this area. It's amazing that whenever they've done that, the conversation that is around all of that, and I've been lucky enough to be a part of it, and I thank Michael and Paloma for asking me to participate in that, and it is shocking. There's birds in there that are, well, they're birds of prey. There's owls. There's, a little bit of everything. We've had a duck. Michael could probably give you the whole list of species, and it's heartbreaking. And it's when people see that then they start to realize what an issue this is.
I think that's a really, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I actually had a question for Michael and Paloma about that, because with our actual surveys in Calgary in the fall, it's like, compared to your layout, we had far fewer birds. We did do a layout at the end. We did it like 1 month in, and then we did it at the end. Compared visually to what you have, like I realized too, does your layout also include ones that maybe were taken directly by people into the rehab center or brought in? Or are they strictly just your survey birds? Because
I can speak to that, and Paloma will probably speak up as well. The majority of the birds are those that our volunteers have picked up off the street. We do have some that come from members of the public, some that may have ended up separate to our volunteers and going to, say, Toronto Wildlife Center, but the majority of them are all those mainly that our volunteers have picked up. And I'd like to make a suggestion here, something that we've been playing around with that might be worthwhile looking at partnering in with you on is doing a live feed of layouts. So you do it, we all do it at the same time. Ottawa does it, Baltimore could do this, whatever birds they have, lay out in real time, broadcast that, promote it, and get as many people to visit each and every one of our social media feeds and observe.
Oh, 100%. That would be incredible.
Worth considering, okay?
That would be really something, because in talking to Melanie too at Calgary Wildlife, the statistics that they're seeing of window strikes there on top of what we're seeing on the surveys is really something. So we've talked about that too, because Dr. Scott Lovell is our third co-founder with St. Mary's University. So the way we're set up, any live animals, live rehab, that's Melanie's department. She deals with the medical side. Anything that's deceased in terms of birds, those go towards Dr. Scott. And those are the ones that are kept for the layout and for future study, either use as specimens or if there's any scientific studies that his students want to do. So that's where they go. So yeah, I think like even talking to Dr. Scott, like his freezers of birds that come into him just from people because they know about him, and they'll take their, this waxwing just hit my window, here you go. So there's quite a lot there. And then Melanie with the birds that they're receiving in, you add all those up for even Calgary, it's pretty stunning. And I think that if we did coordinate and show that, I think that would be really something. The other part too, I was talking to Melanie about too, is if, and sorry, Melanie, I could let you speak on this, but cats as well, because being at the rehab, they have people bringing in injured birds due to cat attacks and such as well, to even be able to start to speak on that and demonstrate that as well physically with that visual. And I was going to show you because we had a little picture, and I know the numbers are not stunning like yours, but on our 26th day, these are the birds that we found, plus the 3 that started all of it in May. So a year ago is when I was inspired by Ottawa and Flap in Toronto to start and looking. And so we found 3 birds. So this includes them, but, and so the number isn't stunning. And I think we have to focus. It's really not on the, any of them is a bad thing when they're striking. But even when you're looking at the, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but even, so that's 26 days of survey plus the 3 from the spring. And then the bags at the back are representing the live ones that we found, took into Melanie. And then also on top of this are the feather piles that you see represented at the bottom. And just like some of the species like that I'd never even heard of, like the ovenbird was just the most dramatic and sad looking bird ever that when we found it. And the warblers and you're on the phone, you'll remember some of the species too that we found, like blackberryan warblers. And like Paul, you mentioned not knowing your species. Well, that's me. I could have told you a house sparrow, magpie, but now it's like, hey, I know what a warbler is, but don't ask me which warbler.
Well, I was just going to say, I remember that first year of doing the layout with Flap, and getting to meet a bunch of the volunteers that work with Flap. And unfortunately, I forget the woman's name, but she had been a birder basically all her life. I think she'd been a volunteer with Flap for quite a long time. And as we were laying out the birds, we had a separate sort of area where it was at-risk species.
Oh.
And she had been birding, and I may be wrong here, but I want to say like she'd been a birder for 40 plus years. And she was holding this bird in her hand, and she was distraught. And I found myself starting to get distraught because she was explaining to me the species of bird and that she had never, ever, ever seen one.
Oh.
And this is the first time she's seen one, and she's holding it in her hands. And again, that whole layout, like, again, we're all used to house sparrows, the good old brown sparrow that I got a ton in my backyard at the feeder. But we're starting to get the yellow finches. I've had a red-headed house finch and stuff like that. I've got a pair of downy woodpeckers. I'm learning. I'm slowly learning.
Nice.
But seeing some of these species that were laid out, again, that I didn't even know existed, was heartbreaking.
Actually, I can definitely relate to that of not having seen a species, well, most of them, and to see them that way. And then I think conversely, like right now with COVID being home so much, now seeing species like the public is seeing all these birds. What is this yellow bird? Is it a parrot?
Yes.
No, it's I can't remember what kind, but there's one that's here that looks like a lovebird, but it's
Paloma and Michael were with me when I first saw my first cedar waxwing. We'd actually had a meeting at the business, and we were talking, and I said, cedar waxwings, I think they're such a cool looking bird. They look, I don't know, they just look really cool to me. And we'd gone outside, and I walked them out, and we were going to the parking lot. And Paloma stopped me, and she goes, that's a cedar waxwing. I go, come on, you're pulling my leg. Sure enough, and these guys are experts. They were doing it by call. I would have never understood it whatsoever. But she goes, look, up in that tree. And sure enough, that was my first cedar waxwing. We saw some, I'm lucky where I live in Toronto. I live near the Humber Trail. And it's a great area for all the migratory birds to come through, a nice waterway with a lot of green space. And, we saw 2 Baltimore Orioles last weekend, sort of chasing each other and playing. And it's just, I don't know. I get more and more excited about this all the time. And again, we're so lucky to be a part of hopefully creating change.
I think that everybody here, I'm so inspired by each of you. Like, usually I'm amazed I'm not getting choked up right now, because it's just yeah, I do quite often. I look at our volunteers who you know, a year ago, when I was walking around downtown I was thinking, oh, it doesn't seem to be a problem in Calgary. I've gone 3 times, I haven't seen anything. And then feeling a little bit odd on my newfound hobby of walking around downtown at 6 a.m. Alone as a middle-aged woman. And then finding that first bird. And then going to, I think that one thing you mentioned earlier, actually it was Michael that brought it up, that one company that, you know, I don't know the corporate structure, if that company is now feather friendly or they started feather friendly.
Yeah, so Convenience Group is our sister company.
Okay.
So to let you know how much things have changed, Feather Friendly was just a part of the Convenience Group who sold solar film, safety film, graphics, etc. in the GTA area. Feather Friendly was incorporated a year and a half ago. We just moved into a brand new, just over 6,000 square foot facility with all our own manufacturing equipment. We just invested several $100,000 in equipment.
Wow.
We've been so lucky, and it's actually hard to talk about it sometimes, because during this pandemic, everything that's gone on, and there's so much bigger things happening in the world.
Yeah.
But to give you an idea, people, I think, are really, really getting back to nature. And I think they're really looking at things in maybe a different light. And I hope that continues.
I think so.
It has to change.
I think that what you're doing is incredible. And you think that even if one person does one thing to help one bird, that's amazing. And so what you're doing with Feather Friendly is helping so many, and each person on this call. And I think that, you know, you talk about doing something, and if you know, where's it going to go? What's it going to look like in 1 year, 5 years? Is it even a thing? And I think that it seems like a lot of us have the same experience, where it took one company to believe in you, or one person to say, this is important. And for us, that was Melanie, because when I spoke to Melanie immediately, you know, no grass grows under that lady's feet. I can tell you that. Because when I first talked to her a year ago, she said, no, this is important. We need to do that. And that was the catalyst. And, you know, we all went from there. And so I think, don't take that for granted. I guess all of us is a lesson. If someone's coming to us with an idea, like, you know, really explore it, because that could be what really helps tomorrow. I think that's fantastic. So I really appreciate that support. Now, Brendan, you shared a picture. Is that something so that people on Facebook that we can save? Is that something that we could share on the screen? Is that okay?
Sure, let me do that.
I think that I can give you control. I'm going to make you the host.
Oh boy.
There, it's all yours. Yeah, so if you, are you
right.
familiar with how to share?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, don't worry. You can't fumble any worse than I do, so.
So just to describe what image you're looking at, last year when I started my PhD, we really did not have a good sense of where collisions were happening on campus. There was sporadic monitoring of a couple of sites, but I imagine most of you aren't familiar with Western University. There's a lot of glass there. Like, I would say the majority of their structures that were built in the last 50 years have a large amount of glass. So I started doing these exploratory surveys. All right, I think I can share my screen. Can you guys see this?
Oh, wow.
So these are 232 birds that were found, mostly on surveys. A couple were submitted via citizen science reports. we didn't collect birds that were decayed, and of course birds that are scavenged before we find them, we don't necessarily document. So I documented about 440 collisions on campus during spring and fall and the summer in between. This is about 232, so roughly half. And based on all the previous similar work that has been done, I would estimate I only captured maybe 20% of the collisions that actually happen. So think of the birds that you're looking at, double that, and then multiply it by 5. And that might be a realistic estimate of how many birds are hitting windows on a university campus every year.
Wow, that is stunning.
But it's hard to know. So when I assembled this, you know, I don't really need these birds' carcasses for my research, right? My research is a bit more theoretical, and increasingly I'm interested in the human, more applied sides of the problem. But I thought, you know, people really need to see this. And I think this was discussed a little bit earlier, but that's often what it takes to get things mobilized on a local level, is somebody to tell the story, and especially visual storytelling, because people need to see these things. And so I assembled this picture, and I think it has changed a few minds. It has convinced people that this is something that's worth looking at. Unfortunately, it hasn't amounted to any action yet. These things take quite a lot of time. But I was assisted by some brilliant people who helped me stage this. So while I'm talking about an individual, I think you really need a solid team approach. From my personal experience, this has been one of the most emotionally difficult things I've had to do in my entire life. I love animals. I got into this work because I wanted to help animals. And when you see this happening everywhere all the time, every single bird you pick up has suffered and died preventably. That's tough. And I'm so grateful to have that team of people around me that helped me through it.
Wow, I'm just really moved by this, Brendan, and all of your efforts to do this, despite the pain of seeing it. It's so easy to turn away. This is something that is pretty, you know, if you don't want to see it, you can turn away from it, but you didn't. You looked at it head on. And one thing I'm noticing too, which I think that is really important, you've got a couple of birds of prey in the middle, and then I see at the bottom, if I'm right, are those hummingbirds, like a lot of hummingbirds?
Quite a few three-throated hummingbirds. Interestingly, most of them come from the same building around one focal point of the year in late summer.
Wow. And I think that it's important for people to know that, because we look at, well, I think even the visual, because like Paul was saying earlier, everybody's got house sparrows, so you say window strikes. People don't have it in their minds as to what is striking, yet everybody loves hummingbirds, everybody loves robins, and look at those. Oh, and there's some juncos.
Yep. People do really like hummingbirds. And when we're talking about the 2x2 spacing, I mean, we need to come up with standards that are inclusive of all birds, right? You know, a 4x4 might prevent something as large as a hawk from trying to pass through it. But exactly what Paula was saying, when you're talking about a hummingbird or a kinglet or something in that range, they can just duck right through a 4-inch gap, no problem.
Right. I see Melanie had a question for you in the chat here about
that. 1 second.
If the...
Can you read it to me?
Yeah, you bet. Sorry, I've got my bifocals on, so I have to look at you funny at the bottom of my glasses. But was there vegetation reflecting on the glass there, which is an important thing now? And I think you're talking about different buildings, aren't you?
So I think maybe she was asking in regards to the localized spot where we found a lot of hummingbirds.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can pull up a picture, if that would help.
Amazing. Sorry, Paul, are you cool with this?
Yeah, I don't. Hey, this is a joint effort. Yeah. Okay. I got no issue. I'm learning here.
Awesome.
Let me just try and find that picture. picture.
Now, while you're looking for that, Paloma has mentioned, she's got a question, a couple of things. Can you say how hard or easy it was to get the admins at the university on board with getting Feather Friendly to come in and treat some of the areas?
That's a good question. And it's a question I don't have a complete answer to, because if I'm being quite honest, we have a lot of work to do. And the university has unfortunately dragged its feet a bit.
Okay.
There are
I
spend
know
a
it's
lot of time thinking about this,
Yeah.
because I think, like I was getting at earlier, a huge part of this problem is inaction and barriers to overcoming maybe people's biases and thinking about these issues and it not being a priority to them. At Western, we have a single glass building that was built a couple of years ago. It's all glass, it's skyscraper. It was like the crown jewel of Western at the time. And that building was retrofitted with not Feather Friendly, but a knockoff Feather Friendly product because they were trying to cut corners. And when they did that, actually the installation did not go so well. Somebody broke a pane of glass. There were dots, missing and all over the place. And so I think they kind of got what they paid for. And I'm telling this anecdote because when they did this, it was quite long after the point in time when bird experts within the university had come forward and said, we're looking at what you're building here. You really should think about mitigation for window strikes.
Yeah.
They said, yeah, whatever. Well, it doesn't matter. And I don't really know about the precise timing of that because that was before my time at Western. But lo and behold, this glass structure gets put up, and after the building was already there and there was glass, on the structure, they said, okay, we're going to look at retrofitting this. And unfortunately, retrofitting a window on a building like that is expensive. We're talking about a lot of glass. The cost can go up by a factor of 4 because you have to get the lift machine in, you have to organize it. And so I think maybe they got this impression that, oh my God, this is such an expensive problem to solve. We have to just, what are we going to do? Like, we have to allocate huge money for this. And that's not necessarily the case. We started with probably one of the biggest amounts of glass on campus, but there's a lot of smaller windows that are just as bad. I think, and this is something that's already been talked about, optics are really important. Understanding the values of the stakeholders, the people that are making the decisions, and trying to relate the important points in a way that is compatible with those values. So if I'm talking about Western cares a lot about its reputation. They want to look good. They want to look like they're doing the right thing. They want to look like they're on the cutting edge and doing really progressive stuff. And so I've tried to cater my message about doing this to meet those values, but that's not necessarily the case everywhere. I don't know if that answers the question in a very wraparound way.
No, that was good, Brandon.
I do think you need to be really persistent. You're going to meet people that say, I don't care about this, or talk to me later, or, whatever, who's this guy? And I think you need to expect that. I think you need to not let that get you down. I think you need to learn from those experiences if you can, because maybe it was a misconnection, right? It was somebody that the conversation didn't go the way it could have gone, but there will be other conversations. And you just got to keep at it and be patient.
One point that Brendan was talking about was, it was an expensive installation because it was a massive area of glass. The volunteers, they need to know they play such an important role in all of this. All that documentation, they're the unsung heroes in a lot of this. Because, a lot of businesses are large commercial projects. The thought process is that they have to treat every facade, that they have to treat that whole 5 stories plus. The fact of the matter is they can address critical areas. They can make it so they're not outlaying a massive amount of money to retrofit a building like this. Like this is, they need a boom truck in order to reach those windows. But you can see this is the perfect storm. Brendan, that's an awesome picture, because that is the perfect storm. How is a bird ever to understand that that's not trees that they're flying into?
One thing that I used in my conversation with administrators in January of this year, glass is technology. We use technology for the most amazing things, but we also need to see that sometimes technology has unintended consequences. And when we derive all these benefits from technology, we also have to take responsibility for their shortcomings. Some of you guys are wearing glasses, right? And I could ask you, do you see those glasses? And you'd say, well, now that I'm looking at them, yeah, they're right there. They're right on my nose. But when you wear glasses every day and you say, I need these glasses to see, yeah, sometimes my ears get a little bit sore, but you do what you have to do because you need to see. I think we can carry that logic forward and talk about treating windows in a similar sense, that you don't pay attention to it anymore. You just get used to it. You say, yeah, we've got this big glass building. It looks nice. We can see out the window. It's lovely. It connects people with nature. But at the same time, we got to do the right thing by the nature we're seeing. And maybe at first it's a little awkward to have some dots, but that building I just showed you, most of the people that work there don't notice the dots. No. I've chatted with folks that have gone to work in that building every day for years, and they never even noticed them. And usually when they find out what the dots are for, they're actually really happy about it. Michael raised his hand.
It's my turn to be blunt.
Go for it.
That building. If anyone knows me, I carry that philosophy. You got to be patient. You got to persevere. You got to have confidence that in time people will change. But quite frankly, the birds don't have time for people to smarten up. And it really does come down to you have to really channel. You have to focus on where you stand to save the most birds. And unfortunately, that means sometimes being the bad guy in the eyes of the rest of the world or in the corporate world, where we need policies, we need standards, we need laws to be enforced to address this issue, because it's taken far too long for society to collectively pool together and do their part to change the built environment and embrace it, right? So we really unfortunately do have to follow that path as well at the same time and make sure we put these laws in place.
I always say the carrot before the stick.
Well, I often think about, Michael has shared stories with me of more or less being ushered out of boardrooms, being ushered off of properties. Dr. Daniel Clem speaking about literally being thrown out or laughed out of presentations or talks about bird collisions. Imagine if, us as a society had paid closer to attention to Dr. Daniel Clem, to Michael 8 years ago, how much further we'd be ahead in the conservation efforts. To all of us, we eat, sleep, breathe this. There is a massive population out there that are just being introduced to bird strikes. Even when the New York City legislation was passed, I noticed there was an article in the paper. I believe it was in the New York Times. And you know how people can comment on the website, and all the comments underneath, people saying, wow, some very colorful language talking about, you're doing this for birds. you know, what are we doing? We've got so many bigger issues in the world, but people don't realize how our ecosystem works and what a large, you know, a role birds play in all of this. And I'll be honest with you, 2.5 years ago, I didn't know either. You know, and that's why we've taken such a stance about the education end of things, because there's a reason why that there's legislation in place. There's a reason why that we've got to address this. I said earlier, like up to 1 billion, and I always say with a B, because people go, oh, it's only 1 million birds. No, 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 no. It's up to 1 billion are killed. And it's not until you see these layouts that you really get the full effect. Go for it, Brendan.
One frustration I have with where we are at with the window collision sphere and all of the knowledge that encompasses is it's very North America centric. When we talk about the 1 billion birds, when we talk about the solutions, when we talk about the universities and the researchers, and what I so admire about what you're doing, Paul, is you don't see borders. You are going where the birds are hitting the windows and you're fixing it. And you have contacts all over the world. And I am just really excited to think about, if we keep this up at the pace we're going, where will we be 5 years from now? Where will we be 10 years from now? I mean, as you pointed out at the start of this meeting, this is an international issue.
Yes.
But at the same time as this is being so big, I think it's also a community issue. I think it's something we really need to understand at a ground level and have advocates at a very local level for. And it's, yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening to be excited about. But to Michael's point, we don't have that many more birds to lose. So everything counts.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think like in Calgary, we're very new. I think we're probably the newest kids on the block, us in Denver. And so I think that, yeah, the balance between building those relationships, like I think that's a stage we're at right now where I'm hoping like we go into it, hoping that like giving, I guess, the benefit of the doubt to the buildings, just the same as a lot of homeowners don't realize there's a problem. And so right now what we're wanting to do is to reach out to those organizations, those companies, and to the buildings to, you know, tell them this is what we found in the fall, and you know, here's some things that you could do about it, and here's some resources to educate and give the opportunity at least to share that information. But we've also got bird-friendly guidelines in Calgary too, which was implemented actually, and I think Michael and Paloma, you're a part of that, creating those bird-friendly guidelines as well. And I think part of what we're wanting to do too, we've got quite a long list of things we want to learn. We want to learn, like, how are those actually used in Calgary? How are they? Have they been implemented to the extent that we hope? And so that's something we really want to learn about and see. Yeah, it is great, hey Brendan, that we've got that. So that's a step in the right direction for sure. Yes, sir, Michael.
May I just say,
Yes.
welcome aboard, by the way. I think what you guys are doing out in Calgary is awesome. You should be congratulated. And because it's not easy to get a local movement going and sticking. And you know, just sitting in the background watching what you guys are doing, you're doing awesome work, and look forward to working with you guys in the future. And you know, let's just, like I said, maybe start with a joint layout with Western and Calgary. And I don't know if Lindsay's there anymore. Is she gone?
Lindsay wrote, she actually got bumped out, and I'm trying to figure out how to get her back in, but her internet, I guess, went down. So she's not there right now, but she might be watching us on Facebook Live now.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say that, and just watching what you are doing out there, it's awesome work you're doing, okay?
Thank you so much, Michael. Definitely would not be where we're at today with volunteers like Anne, and it was a little bit stressful doing it, I have to say, but we had signed up 40 volunteers, many of whom actually were doing surveys and bright and early in the morning. And we even have new ones now, and everybody's so excited to get out, but we're just holding back for safety. But Your words, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
Well, the neat thing is we're all in this together. We may be coming from a different facet of all of this, but the more we can band together, spreading the same message, supporting each other, those strategic partnerships, you know, I'm always here. You know, if you have, you know, a building you want to approach, and I know it may sound a little self-serving for our company, but we are here to help and to back and to maybe add a small piece of the puzzle. So, and anyone who's listening, if we can ever be of assistance with anything you're trying to do, reach out. We're not just about selling product. We're about helping to educate and consult and all of that. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. And yeah, I would reiterate that too. If a company happens to be watching this right now to see kind of where we're at and what our attitude is definitely in terms of educating right now. And we want to, we're hoping that people will reach out to us. And so if we actually did write a letter to one of the buildings that we surveyed, because Paul and I had spoken actually, yeah, it was a joint email with our group, and you had very kindly offered that if there was a particular building or one that maybe, you know, could be interested in showcasing your product to also make a difference. So I'm really hoping that we hear back from them. And if not, then, you know, there's a lot of glass here. There's a lot of opportunity here. Absolutely. So I really hope that people take us up on that, because I think too, like by reaching out to people who really know this, like you would also be able to say, actually, that side isn't the issue. This is your issue, and you only need to treat this part, or maybe, you know, give them that kind of insight too, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that. Thank
Excellent.
you. Yeah, Michael. Hope you just muted yourself.
I'm curious about if you have any thought processes on going outside of the city, because as you travel toward the mountains and you start to encounter more vegetation, you're likely to encounter a greater likelihood of bird strikes. Because if I'm not mistaken, what I remember of Calgary is that it's not a barren city, but you are sort of in the middle of flats. There isn't a tremendous amount of vegetation there, but the closer you get to the mountains, it increases, right? So I'm thinking of conservation areas, you know, visiting stations, structures like that. I can guarantee you there's a likely greater volume of bird strikes out there than there might be in the city itself. Have you ever
That's actually a really interesting observation, and one I hadn't personally thought of. I think that Mel, and I know that we've got like the somebody mentioned in the chat here too, the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada is doing a lot of work in terms of dark skies, and I think they've got more there. Thinking in terms too of along that corridor, along the Rockies and the kinds of areas that you're talking about. One thing that we really want to do is to reach out to regular citizens and using like your bird mapper to educate people on what they could be doing. And we've got a great person who does videos. So we're really hoping that that we can get a video done more polished and professional than I would do myself on my iPhone. To sort of walk a regular citizen through, like, there's a school at the end of your street. Let's walk down to it. Let's go around it. This is what you're looking for. Awesome. There's none. Perfect. Write that down. Tomorrow, do the same and see what you find. And we could, we kind of coined it as a bit of a building buddy program, or maybe somebody does work in in Kananaskis or Cochrane or Cadmore, which is, you know, closer to the type of space that you're speaking of, where we could start to collect a lot more information like that on a more I guess organized fashion, just through citizen science. That would be great. See, there's quite a few chats here. Is there anything I'm missing?
One thing I wanted to just add, and I think this encompasses what you guys are talking about. There tends to be this focus on the immediate vicinity of the building and what the context in the immediate vicinity means for the risk of collisions, right? So things like vegetation right across from a pane of glass, or fly-through conditions, or that sort of thing. And what we really are just starting to understand is how the broader landscape is involved. So getting back to what you guys were just discussing, in a city center, you have relatively less bird habitat. Versus as you move into the suburbs, you're more likely to encounter streets with lots of mature trees on them, more things for birds to eat, more places for birds to set up nests. So I think a big issue we have to combat is this public misconception that just high-rise buildings are the problem. People think, oh yeah, those darn glass skyscrapers. And it's simply not true. That would be a very convenient answer. It's the backyards. It's the restaurant across from a conservation area, or where you have inappropriately placed barriers, that kind of thing.
I kind of wonder, like what you're speaking of too, and the sort of the building buddy idea that we had, which is probably not dissimilar to what other efforts are. And there's the global bird rescue that happens. I wonder if we together could put together a similar project where we have some goal, like 1,000 buildings per city be checked, where we get citizens to pick your building, and we want to see, we don't care if there's zeros, we don't care, like we love zeros, zeros are great because it gives us a basis of data, but to really do a huge blitz on as many buildings as we can would be amazing.
I would love nothing more. I mean, I think if you look at the Mapper database, it's so impressive how many people have contributed time and effort. And I think it's a testament to how much people care about birds as well.
Yeah.
Those kinds of projects, when you scale them up, there's always trade-offs, right? Like if you're doing huge surveys involving many people, the quality of the data is going to be a little bit more noisy. You know, people have their own stuff going on, so it always becomes more complicated the bigger you get.
True.
But I think a way around that is to have many groups working in different cities in a standardized way, right? So that we can start to compare. And the biggest and most important thing of all is if you're going to do surveys, you really need to track effort. Because unless you, I mean, I'm probably explaining things you already know, but unless
that's okay, because actually a lot of people on the line too, this is new for everybody, so that's great. No, please do.
You know, you can go out and count birds and find 100 dead birds and oh my god, but what does that mean, right? You really need to place that into context if you want to understand the severity of the problem. So things like how many buildings did you check, how many windows even, and how often are you checking, how many people are checking, you know, how good is your vision even, like these are all things that get factored in. And that's if you want to really get a solid, rigorous analysis underway of the data to answer some research questions. If it's just about producing awareness, I think every dead bird you find is meaningful and important.
This is true. Wow.
If I may add just one thing, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
One thing that we here at FLAP have sort of moved away from, or at least we tried to move away from, is instead of saying this many birds have died at your structure, you know, let's figure out a way to mitigate this problem. We're looking at it more from just simply the potential for bird strikes, based on what the research has concluded and experience has demonstrated to us as to why birds collide with windows. Whether a bird has collided with your building or not, it clearly has the potential for it to happen. And therefore you need to address this issue, because if we always approach this from only those buildings that have documentation are viably, you know, prepared to move forward and take action, we're only going to hit the tip of the iceberg again, right? So
that's a good point.
We recommend looking at this from the potential of strikes rather than how many birds are or are not colliding with the windows.
Yep. I mean, I in my head have thought about this and kind of loosely related it to all of the precautions governments took for COVID-19, where we closed things down, right? Like we reacted proactively. We did stuff because we weren't sure how bad it is. We just knew it was going to be bad. So let's be safe, right?
Yeah.
And I think in general, people have a hard time grasping hypotheticals. When you explain to them risk, that, you know, we're looking at your structure, it's going to kill a lot of birds. We don't know how many, but it's going to be a lot. What that boils down to for that person in that moment is the trust that they place in you and what you're saying to them. Because you don't know, those birds aren't here yet. Those birds might not even be born yet. And so I think projecting credibility is really important for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really, yeah, that's good. And I think your point too, Brendan, about when you're doing data, if you are doing data, like you're right, Michael, like if we can't show birds at every single building, we can't be everywhere. And I think that maybe if there are folks that pick this up later, or they're watching and they're not familiar with window strikes, maybe if somebody would like to explain about, like, as Paul touched on earlier, if a bird strikes the window, we may or may not ever see that bird. There may be no witnesses ever of the humankind to see that. And a lot of times, from my understanding, well, maybe I'll just say it really quickly and then you guys can correct me because you're the ones that taught me this. But if a bird has struck a window, there's a lot of things that could happen to it. If it's stunned, it could fly off and die elsewhere. There's a lot of scavengers that live downtown, even in the metropolis of Calgary, that could be picking them up. We see a lot of crows, there's a lot of magpies and other scavengers. Apparently there's even coyotes that can come out when the people aren't around, you know, early hours as well. So things like that. Even the people who are cleaning outside of the buildings, we start to really observe that. What time are the cleaners coming out and try to get there quicker, because they're just doing their job. They're not trying to do anything wrong at all. We just they're just keeping everything clean. So I think there's so many reasons why.
Another really
me walking to work, as I don't see a bird, there must not be a problem. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. Another really big one that you encounter very quickly when you start the surveys is buildings that have shrubbery at the base of the windows. Because unless you have a decent flat surface on which the bird could land and you can spot it, you're out of luck, right? If a bird is at the bottom of a bush, you're probably not going to see it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, often you have birds that land on top of structures. You have a bird that might hit a second or third story window, and then it lands on the roof of the first story. And if you're on the ground walking around, you can't see that.
Yeah, actually, you know, what's interesting, we have data from the mid-90s, which I think also Michael and the team were involved in with the Calgary Bird Banding Society. They have 3 years of data. And it was a little bit different than how we do it. I think it was a lot more in cooperation with the buildings, would be, you know, advising on different birds that they had found. And so they had access to different areas in the buildings that we can't traditionally get to. So in looking back at that, depending on how they describe the data, you could see where a number of birds would be found on the top of a, like just on a terrace or something where we wouldn't see if we're on the street level. So I think that's true. Yeah. Wow. This is so fantastic. I could talk to you guys all week.
Well, it is a topic that has so many facets to it that we could keep discussing. So if you ever want to just continue to this discussion another Wednesday, or, you know, separately via email or however, anyone, please feel free to reach out.
Well, I'm really, really grateful for your time, Paul, and for everybody else. And we've only got a few people who are like online right now, but I know that people knew the birds get to go onto Facebook. We'll leave it on Facebook, and so that we can pick it up later and watch it later as well. But I would actually really like, even if we did just one for the volunteers of our organizations, and like obviously like partners like you, Paul, and others, to have just really to sit down and figure some of these interesting ideas out together, like you had all put out there, would be really great. And if anybody who's watching has questions, to please let us know. Please reach out. We are here to, as you know, we're as an organization learning as well, but we are fortunate to have these terrific partners from coast to coast that we can call out to for any assistance or guidance or wisdom. And I'd love to have, we're very excited actually. I will tell you, so we've got next week, for Wildlife Wednesday, one of our own volunteers, Gavin McKinnon, is a very youthful birder, but I believe he's still in high school. But he managed to do his big year last year in Alberta and got 300 sightings of different species. So he'll be here next week to talk to us about get into birding for those who are new. Lots of us are at home a lot more than we used to be. So you could even do, how to really look at the animals or even in your own yard. And then the following week we have Paloma and Michael will be here too. And I hope that all of you will come back and help to have this sort of engagement. We're so excited to have you too, Paloma and Michael. And then the week after, we also have Brian Keating. If you're from Calgary, you know all about Brian. He's a fantastic speaker and is going to leave us for the summer with some really uplifting messages. So I hope that all of you join us for that. He won't be a Debbie Downer like I am. And yeah, I really want to thank you, Paul. You reached out to us and you've been so supportive. I did actually talk today. We have a wonderful partner in the community, the Wild Bird Store, and they're going to help us put together a video that will help, I think, to spread the word on different types of window treatments like we had talked about. And so we're going to go ahead and get that done. So we're going to use the Wild Bird Store's frontage and your product and lots of others. So, and hopefully educate some more folks on what they can do at home. So, really
well, thank you very much for the time, and thank you to everyone that joined us, and all our other partners with Brendan and Michael and Lindsay and Paloma. They've been a great help to me, so I would like to point out and thank them. I would say everyone should keep Brendan's name in their mind. He is going to be, I think, a force to be reckoned with research and going into the future. So, I've been lucky enough to spend some time with Brendan, everyone just keep your eye on him. I think he's gonna create some interesting things in the future and more awareness. I thank so much to Michael and Paloma for their friendship and their support. It's meant the world to me, and it's elevated me. They've inspired me, and they're just good people. So I thank them for being partners, and I thank them for being friends.
Aww.
We're lucky to be a part of all of this.
Incredibly lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful to all of you. Thank you so much. And Brendan, would you come back and do one of this with us?
Why not? I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, that's great. Well, I guess we'll close it off, but I thank you all, and I'm really look forward to seeing definitely you back in 2 weeks, hopefully in a week for our next talk as well, but definitely see you back. And take care.
Thank you so much, everyone.
And have a wonderful week. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Take care.